Hey there, welcome to the Reinsurance Podcast, the place where we dive into all things reinsurance, the coolest part of insurance. We're your hosts, Jared and Ben, a couple of ex-practitioners who loved the industry so much we founded Supercede to tackle some of its biggest headaches. And we're here to share our insights and stories with expert guests as we uncover what's really going on in the industry. Perfect. Welcome, everybody, to the news for December, the wrapping up 2024. I'm joined this time with Tom Spier. Welcome, Tom. Ben's taking a few days off, so you're kind enough to join us to do the news. So ready to dive in?
Hopefully not as poor a replacement as I was for you. You're enjoying your
the podcast needs a British and an American sort of counterbalance, and if it's two Brits, it just doesn't have that same.
I do like the energy of having two Americans, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's always high energy the more Americans back into a room. But we'll dive into the news to wrap up December. A couple things coming out here that are of importance. Lloyd's expecting to maintain some strong results, both wrapping up this year but going into next year. And there's a number of things that we see driving that, especially for that forward-looking sort of excitement that Lloyd's is looking at.
Yeah, they're predicting a record year on top of a record year, which is obviously very, very good for the market, and lots of expansion as well. I think business plans are in now at Lloyd's. Mm-hmm. Lloyd's syndicates have to do everything a month early. Yeah. And so they're looking up kind of organically 20% or so. Mm-hmm. That's primarily kind of driven by the hard market and increased pricing. We're not seeing increased risk exposure across the board there. Mm-hmm. But a couple of new syndicates and obviously some changing hands of some syndicates as well that are starting to drive that. So Aviva are starting to really put together a lot of their business planning and the changes in focus that they're going to make at Probitas. And then we've had the news this week of AIG starting their own syndicate with third-party capital. Looks like they've got the first backer for that in Blackstone. Mm-hmm. And that's going to primarily write AIG's reinsurance business for AIG's primary exposures. Yeah. So they seed around about $12 billion into the market every year. So they're a big, big buyer of reinsurance. Yeah. And they want to put a load of that through the Lloyd's market. So those guys must be absolutely delighted.
Yeah. No, it's going to be a really exciting sort of year to watch that. And there's a number of companies sort of continuing to evaluate should they, put their, foot into the Lloyd's pool. Do they want to set up the syndicates and do that? This might be a bit of a case. Over the last few years, it's been a bit more of a, is the cost worth it? Are the constraints around being a syndicate worth it? We might see that beginning to shift now. There might be a bigger pull into the Lloyd's market, which I think sort of raises all ships.
I think we might. I think people are still concerned by the expense ratios. Expense ratios are still high. Yep. They need to come down. The market hasn't adopted technology in the way that people expected it to. Yeah. And it's going to be important that they start to focus on that. But things like the brand name, the licenses, make things very attractive to start up a business unit very quickly.
Yeah. Given that we're running into 1/1s now, we're starting to get the first sort of indications, of what pricing will do for this renewal season. The expectations were flat, maybe down a little bit, up to 5%. We're seeing some reports coming out now that, for at least property cat, we might be coming down as much as 10% for like non-loss affected layers.
That's more than was expected. Yeah. I think right through Baden-Baden even, we're expecting kind of flat or -3 to 5. So yeah, this latest report coming out showing a 10% reduction. That's significant. I think we're seeing concerns around casualty reserving come home to roost. Yeah. And there'll be a lot of the reports this week and over the last couple of weeks have indicated kind of a more dramatic hardening in that. So is the hard market over? Yeah. Probably not, is what things are saying. But property cat, definitely softening a little bit.
Well, it looks like it'll still be very much like class divided, right? You'll have this bifurcation of the market where some sectors will remain to be very, very difficult, and others will begin to soften, and capacity will flow through accordingly. But the big story for the month is the story that we've also been waiting to be officially announced for 2 years now. The announcement of Willis is coming back into reinsurance, right?
Yes.
Boosted by, as the hard market calls it, Daddy Greg's money from the unraveling of that deal a few years back. But this is a big shift. This announcement that they're coming back.
Yeah. So there was an investor event this week for Willis Towers Watson, and Carl Hess and Lucy Clark kind of stood up and finally announced the worst kept secret in reinsurance, which is that they're going to put together a joint venture with Bain Capital for a brand new startup reinsurance broker, which is going to use the Willis brand, Willis's technology arm. And they're very excited about it. Carl Hess was incredibly bullish to the market, saying that they think the reception is going to be, I think, exceptional is one of the words that he used from partners that they have. They already sell a lot of technology to carriers. They have an established name. The Willis Re brand it's not gone away. It's only been a couple of years since that was out. And they've had a FAC business consistently. That didn't go away with the disposal of the old Willis Re treaty business to Gallagher.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch this pan out and how quickly they can scale that business. We've talked about this before on the podcast. I think the market benefits from like diversity across the big brokers. How big Willis gets and in what sort of period of time will be sort of to be determined. But if we get back to an era that we had maybe 7-8 years ago where there was sort of 4 or 5 significant broker contenders, I think that's good for cedents in terms of the advisory capabilities that they get, the sort of spread of knowledge across the market. I think that's a good thing. So we'll see what sort of the driving model they go out with.
And Carl Hess was challenged on that in the investor call, sort of saying, is there room? There's been so many new startup brokers. Is there going to be space for it? I think the ambition is that it becomes very big very quickly. And obviously over recent years, we've seen the growth of brokers like Howden and the way Howden Re have kind of aggressively gone after talent in the market. That's made them kind of a solid fourth. So I think if those big 4 become a big 5, then most clients will be pretty pleased about that.
Yeah, the other indication of Carl's bullishness was in this sort of announcement, or at least indication that there's already in place the terms for them to sort of buy out Bain, right? There's this that's already sort of structured into the agreement. So he's like, if we get to these points, this will bring this entirely back in-house. Like Bain is that sort of launching capital, if you will, but the ambition that they have is very much to use it for that purpose and then stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah, I don't think that was massively surprising in the sense that they'll want to protect it against an acquisition from one of their competitors. And they'll be at risk to that. I think the questions start to become, if they follow through on acquiring the joint venture, how do they make sure there's enough skin in the game for the talent that they're going to hire? They're going to need some big names. Apparently the management team is like a couple of weeks away from being announced. So it seems like they've made a lot of those hires already. They're going to have very, very big incentives built into their packages. So keeping those intact whilst bringing the broker into a group like Willis is going to be difficult for them, for sure. Yeah,
this is like some of these stories, this will be one that kind of unfolds over the coming months as we get more and more of those names announced. It reminds me of like the early McGill days where it was just every couple of weeks you get a new big name sort of jumping ship from one of the big 3. I think you're going to see a similar momentum. It's like, oh, this person's just exiting this other firm to go to Willis Re. So we'll sort of continue to update our listeners on those developments as they
good time for everyone to ask for a salary review.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. At least submit it to the hard market's annual salary review for that. But until next time, that's the last news update for 2024. So we will see you all in the new year.
Yeah, with an exciting update on how 1/1's gone for everybody.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Reinsurance Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing, preferably 5 stars. For more insights and updates, follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website at supercede.com/podcasts. You'll find the links in the show notes.